Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be talking about the Melt Cosmetics Recently Deceased palette. This is part of their big collection that they did with Beetlejuice. I wasn't going to review this palette after I bought it because it is a limited edition collection, but it was asked, so I am going to do it. Online at Sephora, this palette and the other palette are both sold out. But I know that some Sephora stores still have them, like, physically, and I'm pretty sure the Melt website still has both palettes. So if you end up at the end of this wanting it, I'm sure there are ways that you can find it. So like I said, Melt did launch a big collection in collaboration with Beetlejuice. I think that's a really smart collaboration. Like, I think they fit together very well, the sort of Melt style and Beetlejuice. So that wasn't a surprise to me. What was a surprise to me was that they started teasing this collection at the end of October, and it wasn't due to come out until the end of November. Like, that seems weird to me. You would think the Beetlejuice collection would come out in October for Halloween, because then it has all the Halloween hype around it. Like, I don't know, like, I would just think that that would make more sense. Similar to the Hocus Pocus and ColourPop collection. You know, even if that collection wasn't very good, you know, I didn't get any of it, so I have no idea. But even if it wasn't very good, it was going to have the hype around it being Halloween and people wanting it for that reason. So I'm surprised that they decided to launch this when they did. So this palette retails for $63 Canadian, and you get 8 eyeshadows in it. When you open up the packaging itself is actually very cool because it's this plastic. Typically I prefer cardboard packages, but this one is this nice sort of like absolutely highlighter yellow packaging, plastic packaging. And then you open it and you get this, it's sort of like, you know, like a section of film, and it's the shot from when they're about to dig up Beetlejuice in the mini graveyard. And then you get 8 shades inside. The other eyeshadow palette that they launched is called the Waiting Room palette, and it's a little bit more expensive, and there are 10 eyeshadows in that palette. But this one is very green, very purple, very bright colors, and very up my alley, and so it's sort of the thing that I wanted, and I don't have a lot of these kinds of colors in my own collection, so that's why I decided to buy this palette. Also, because I have it over here, this is the box that it comes in. It's black and, you know, sort of dark purpley striped. It's a very pretty little box. Taking the quickest look ever at it on the Sephora website, it says what it is: a pressed pigment palette that contains 8 strange and unusual shades inspired by Beetlejuice himself. This product is cruelty-free and gluten-free. What else you need to know? This pressed pigment palette includes vibrant purples, manic greens, and mossy yellows, complete with a custom press of the ghost with the most Beetlejuice. So, now let's get to my thoughts of this palette. I apologize because I wasn't planning on shooting a video right away. I didn't take any close-up shots of it before I used it. So some of the Beetlejuice impresses are used, so they're not quite as intense as they were to begin with. I think you'll get over that, to be honest with you. So one of the things to know with this palette is technically the entirety of the purple row is not eye safe. This is one of the reasons why this palette is called a pressed pigment palette, and the other eyeshadow palette, the Waiting Room palette, is called an eyeshadow palette, because these are pressed pigments. So these purple ones especially are not FDA approved for the eye. Now, that does bother me with some things, like especially glitter. Like, I hate watching people use craft glitter or that ColourPop Glitterly Obsessed. I hate watching them use that on their eyes, because if that gets in your eye, it's gonna, like, get in there and cut up your corneas and cause a whole ruckus. But for these shadows, because they're mostly mattes, the reason they're not approved is because they can cause irritation and they can stain. Now, for me, they don't cause irritation, but the purple ones actually do stain my eyelids. I've never had an eyeshadow actually stain my eyelids before. Honestly, I don't mind, because I'm either wearing makeup or I wash my face twice a day. Like, it's gonna come off sooner or later. So that's not a big issue for me. If it is a big issue for you, go for it. I just want to clarify to you that I know these aren't eye safe, and I know I've been a big sort of advocate for not putting things that aren't eye safe on your eyes in the past. But really, I mean that with things like glitter, things that if you get them in your eye, they're going to cause damage. Whereas this is more just, it's going to stain your eyes. So I don't mind that as much, but take from that information what you will. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've watched some reviews of this palette, and they're all sort of mixed. And I understand. Because this is a pressed pigment palette, there is so much pigmentation in these eyeshadows. They're kind of hard to work with. Like, this is not a beginner eyeshadow palette. If it was a beginner eyeshadow palette, I'd like to think that they would have done 10 shades, and there would be some kind of neutrals to help blend stuff out. But the way it is, they're so pigmented that as soon as you put them on your eye, they stick, and then you get tons of fallout. So when I was doing my makeup earlier today, obviously I had the top row on one eye and the bottom row on the other eye. The green row, which is funny because that's the row that is, you know, FDA approved. That side I find much easier to blend out. I don't find it sticks as much as the purple row does. It's much easier to blend out. So starting from the green eye, I used the yellowy shade Draw a Door to kind of create a halo eye, and then I used the sort of limey, mossy green shade Beetlejuice to help blend that out, and then I used the dark shade Paranormal on my lid with the shade Neurotic. In the past, I have done a completely matte eye look with this palette and used that Beetlejuice shade all over my eyelid, and it definitely did stick patchy. It wasn't the worst, but it also wasn't the best. I had a hard time blending it out. I used my finger, I used a brush. I had a very hard time getting it to sort of even itself out, so that's just a warning. The purple shadows I find much more difficult. If you're looking at my eye and you're noticing that there's this like weird harsh line in the corner here, that is really because there's not a whole lot in the purple half of this palette to blend things out with. I put them down and then it doesn't want to blend, and they sort of get like a ring around them, and it's much more difficult to blend those out. Now, whether that's the eyeshadows or just my, mediocre skill level, it could be either way, but I did my best. So I used the shade Bio Exorcist first, all the way around my eyeball, and then I sort of blended that out with the shade Lost Souls, and then similar to what I did on the other eye, I used the darker, sort of glittery shade Recently Deceased on the outer half of my eyelid, and then Little Accident, which is the lighter, sort of glittery shade on the inner eyelid. None of the purple shades are as glittery as the glittery shades in the green half, just to point that out, which I find quite weird. I don't know why they didn't go for sparklier purple shades, but I guess it is what it is. When I did a purple matte eye look, I actually have video footage of this because that one I found to be really patchy. And all I had used was, my regular concealer and my regular powder on my eyelid, and I could not get them to blend out. Like, it looked patchy. It's a good thing I wear such thick eyeliner and usually such thick lashes, because I just couldn't get it to look right. It looked so patchy. I was really disappointed in it that day. So overall, while I do find this palette personally to be beautiful, and it's exactly the kind of color scheme that I wanted, Beetlejuice or no Beetlejuice, I thought it was gorgeous, and I would have bought this palette anyway because I love doing purple eyeshadow and I love doing green eyeshadow, and I think the fact that it's a collaboration with Beetlejuice really just takes that over the top and it makes it beautiful. So if you're a big Beetlejuice fan, I don't know that I would consider myself a big Beetlejuice fan, but I definitely like the movie. You might want this, and if you like these colors, it might still be worth it for you. But this is rather a difficult palette to use. It doesn't blend out very easily, so I just feel like if you want to buy this palette, just be ready to have to work for it a little bit, because it's not super simple. I was watching Pompberry try this, and she mentioned that it's not quite the same formula as regular Melt eyeshadow palettes. So it definitely hasn't turned me off of Melt. I really like Melt as a brand. This is the first thing from them I've ever tried. But I really appreciate the fact that they're one of the only brands I feel out here trying new things, doing interesting things, doing makeup that's not just neutral brown eyeshadow palette every 3 months of the year. So I have massive amounts of respect for them as a brand. I just don't love the formula on this palette in particular, because I do find it like I really have to work for it to get it to blend out. And again, that could be because they're just so bright, they're so pigmented. But if they were going to do that, then maybe there should have been 10 shades in this palette, and you could have put some other shades to help blend out some of the more difficult shades. Does that make sense? Like, they could have thrown in 2 extra eyeshadows and had them be like little helper shades to help blend out some of the more difficult shades. So those are my thoughts. I think it's a nice eyeshadow palette. I definitely don't regret buying it. I definitely love that I have it, but I just would say it's not for everybody. Not even just because of the color scheme, but because it depends sort of on your eyeshadow skill level and how comfortable you are blending difficult to blend eyeshadows. I also, if I can just take one aside for a second, I have one other gripe with this collection, and that is, it was a big collection, and the only things that launched at Sephora were the eyeshadow palettes. And we knew that to begin with. Like, I'm not saying I was surprised by that. They said that in one of the Instagram lives, but maybe it was a licensing issue, but I have no idea. I'm just disappointed because they launched this, like, beautiful chartreuse eyeliner as part of this collection, and also a gray eyeliner, and I didn't make it to the website in time the day that this launched. They sold out, like, instantly, which I think is silly, and they're not doing restocks, again, because of licensing issues, so they sold out right away, so I'm not getting them. But the only things that launched at Sephora were the eyeshadow palettes. Like, why not do the liners, the brushes, the lipsticks? I don't understand. They explained on one of their Instagram lives that they weren't restocking because of licensing issues, but they didn't explain why only the eyeshadow palettes were going to Sephora. I just think if you're a company that doesn't have any freestanding stores, but you sell in Sephora, you should launch the whole collection in Sephora. I would have spent more money than just the palette if they had put the eyeliners in stores. I really wanted the green one. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the Melt Cosmetics Recently Deceased palette. What are your thoughts? Would this be the sort of palette that you would consider picking up, or would you not consider it? It's actually, I'm surprised by the price because I would have expected it to be more expensive, especially because I'm Canadian, so everything's more expensive here. I would have expected the price to be way higher up there, but $63 is still a lot for eyeshadow, of course, but it's not as high as I thought they were going to put it, so I'm surprised by that. Happily surprised. Would this be the sort of thing that you would think about getting? Would this be the sort of thing that you would think about trying? Are you interested in bright eyeshadows? Or do you prefer to stay in the more neutral zone, which is totally fine too, of course? I'm just interested to hear what you think. What are your thoughts? Let me know everything that you think about makeup. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up and you subscribe to my channel if you have not subscribed already, and I will see you next time. Bye!